This presentation involves the topic of transgression in video games. Along with discussing the impact of video games on today's society, we will be attempting to discover a link between cases of real-life violence in video games by reflecting on past experiences. So, what was the first video game? Arguably, the first developed was that of the American physicist William Higginbotham in October 1958. Named Tennis for Two, it simulates a game of tennis and is easily recognizable with the 1970s hit Pong. The game itself was played on a 5-inch oscilloscope screen at the 1958 Visitors' Day Instrumentation Division exhibit. It was also never meant for commercial use. Aluminium controllers were used to serve and volley the bright dot or ball to the other player. The monumental rise of the gaming industry. It began its meteoric rise in the early 1970s with the introduction of home games consoles. The Magnavox Odyssey, released in 1972, is considered to be the first. Over the next 40 years, the industry grew to become the most universal form of entertainment. The computer and video games industries took in about $9.5 billion in the US in 2007, $11.7 billion in 2008, and $25.1 billion in 2010. This is according to the annual report by the Entertainment Software Association. Video games currently outsell film and music industries combined. This first graph indicates the United States video game industry revenue from 1995 to 2010, where the y-axis is the revenue in billions of US dollars and the x-axis the year. The peak is found in 2008 at $22 billion. Analysts believe that the industry may hit a 6-year low due to a steady decline in subdivided monthly revenue year after year. Despite the damaging news, nothing has stopped the developers from developing fantastic games and fans from drooling at expositions such as E3. This second graph shows the global video game sector revenue in millions of US dollars from 2005 to 2014. On the y-axis is found the revenue in millions of dollars, and on the x-axis the year. Although PC games, online games, mobile games, and in-game advertising are seeing growth, console games revenue are leveling off and are said to be steadily declining in the years 2015 and 2016. According to Forbes, the global gaming industry is worth $80 billion. However, new reports forecast it to be worth well beyond $90 billion by 2017. Iron Man 3, which was released in 2013, made $1.2 billion worldwide, whereas GTA 5 made the same amount in just 3 days. This easily shows the gaming industry's superior global influence over film. Globalization isn't just jargon for your economics class. Online gaming platforms are globalizing who players connect with. Players may cooperate or compete against any player with an internet connection, including those across the globe. According to an interview by Byte Level Research with Heather Chandler, author of the Game Localization Handbook, most game developers are now debuting games globally from day one. Many multiplayer games online, such as Guild Wars, feature in-game economies where players earn money in-game, which can then be used to buy rare goods within the online sphere. The presentation will now introduce you to the dark side of gaming. I will be referring to several cases of real-life violence and atrocities, but focusing more on the Columbine High School tragedy, which has been so often linked to video games. Picture 1 is the cover in Times 1999 magazine. Picture 2 is the Washington Post's heading of the 2012 Sandy Hook massacre. Picture 3 are the faces of Adam Lanza, Aurora shooter James Holmes, and Tuscan shooter Jared Lee Loughner. The theme of death is prevalent throughout the majority of popular video games. Grand Theft Auto, otherwise known as GTA, Call of Duty, otherwise known as COD, and Assassin's Creed are all centered around killing in order to complete the game. Comical violence isn't only reserved to GTA. Other games such as Saints Row share this theme. Insane acts in Saints Row include running around beating people up with a dildo bat, calling airstrikes at will, shooting people with mind-controlling exploding octopi, and using mind control. Of course, violence is not the only form of transgression that exists in video games. Sex is extremely common too. Soft Porn Adventure, released in 1983, is the earliest video to feature sexual themes. The aim of this game was to sleep with as many women as possible and becoming one hell of a beefcake. Along with violent games, sexual games were subject to game ratings and systems. Pan-European Game Information, otherwise known as PEGI for Europe, and Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, for the United States. The Columbine High School Massacre. On April 9th, 1999, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris savagely murdered 12 students and a teacher at Columbine High School in an act of mass murder and simultaneous suicide. A further 24 were injured, including 3 who were attempting to escape. Tying Columbine to video games. Both Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were fans on first-person shooter or FPS video games, in particular Doom. Eric Harris would go on to create a series of levels which investigators would later state closely resembled the canteen at the school. Following lengthy lawsuits, the families of the victims claimed video games helped bring about the killings. These are but a couple more mass shootings blamed on video games. That of Virginia Tech in 2007 and of Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012. Moral Panic and the Blame Game. A series of studies of 11 to 18-year-olds were conducted by Dr. Christopher Ferguson. In conclusion, he states that there is no evidence to suggest that exposure to violent video games is associated with violent criminal behavior. The term associated with outcry over video games following mass shootings is described as moral panic. Dr. Ferguson suggests that whenever a new form of media comes out that particular older generations don't use or understand, it's very common for new media to be blamed for a variety of social ills. A dictionary of sociology defines a moral panic as a process of arousing social concern over an issue, usually the work of moral entrepreneurs and the mass media. In other words, moral panic equals worry plus hostility. For years, some scholars have argued there are problems with arguments linking violent video games and other media to acts of violence in society. Societal stakeholders may take advantage of moral panics. In the tragic case of Sandy Hook, we had the opportunity to watch a moral panic unfold in real time. I will now leave you with a quote from Professor Brad J. Bushman of Communication Psychology and Professor and Director Craig A. Anderson at the Department of Psychology. Thank you for watching.